Hey, this is Karen, Coach's Corner Chats, and joining me is Andre Luciano. Andre, where are you at, and what are you up to?
I am in Las Vegas. This is home. So I'm currently working with Sports Recruiting USA on a full-time basis, doing player evaluation and placements. Dabble a little bit on the club side of things, and then just enjoying being a former college coach and having some downtime. So.
What is it that you enjoy so much about now, kind of that new career change of going into recruiting?
I think the big thing is that I feel like I'm actually providing really quality information and content for people to kind of jump into in terms of the education side of it. And then, the reward is always the placement side of it. When you're able to go out and actually help a kid find a school that they're really, happy about. And when they, text you and say, hey, I just committed to such and such school, there's a lot of rewards, that come out of that. Whereas, I think beforehand, it was always such a grind, these battles to win games, to recruit, to always be on. And, now I can kind of just sit back a little bit and just take it in as a I guess a fan of the game and watch the game just for the sake of watching the game when I need to. And then to look at some kids and go, hey, I think these are things that you can work on, that you can get a little bit better, that'll give you a better opportunity later on. And really sitting down with the families and helping them understand the whole college process, because it's a lot. There's a lot of information out there, and there's a lot of things parents don't know. And I think that I can provide a good amount of information for them.
What has it been like going from all the nonstop of coaching to now? Like, what's it? How do you see the game differently now, being on the recruiting side versus on the coaching side?
Well, I think the difference is that whatever level that you're coaching, whether it be Division 1, Division 2, Division 3, NAIA, junior college, you're always recruiting to try to elevate your program to a higher standard. And so, like for myself, I spent 18 years at a mid major as a Division 1 coach at a mid major, and we knew that we weren't going to go probably get the top Power 5 kids, and so we're always trying to elevate our own programs in the way that we thought we could actually recruit a player and get a player. And so for me now to sit back and watch a game and go, oh man, this kid's really good. This kid's got a high ceiling to them, and it's just nice sometimes just to not have to sit there and have a notepad and try to take notes on 22 players and just dial in on the one kid that you're working with. I kind of enjoy that a little bit more, because I can really break down the things that I feel like they can improve on, the things that they're really good at, and not look at it from, hey, what is it about my program that's going to benefit off of this kid? But it's like, what is it about this kid in particular that's going to help a program, and depending on the different levels. So I can actually just relax a little bit more. I really like the interactions with the college coaches on the sideline. I've always liked that. And so to, sit down and kind of get an idea of what the current trends are, what's going through these coaches' heads in terms of like what's coming down the pipeline. And, now I have a little bit less filter. I just speak my mind now, and I really don't care, and so it's good, so it's like, you've got me unfiltered now, which is a little bit better.
So, when did the love of soccer begin for Andre? Were you playing as a youth? Like, when did all this kind of start?
Well, let's see. I'll kind of give you a quick timeline. So I was born in Italy. I was raised in Brazil for 12 years. My grandfather and my whole mom's side of the family, they're Slovaks, and my grandfather was involved in the game in Czechoslovakia. My great uncle was a professional player in Czechoslovakia, and when I lived in Brazil, I literally was 3 blocks from Mudumbi Stadium, which is where São Paulo Football Club has their home field, and that's part of their club in terms of the actual club aspect of it, but I wasn't part of their teams. But I was always around the game. So, I moved a lot back and forth between the US and Brazil. And so I was always like, hey, you're the American kid, and you're involved around the game. And my love for the game was developed through just watching the beautiful game, how I felt like it should always be played, like the Brazilian style, right? So like that 82, 82 World Cup team that, Brazil's World Cup team, that's like the team that made me completely fall in love with soccer. But and I think just experiencing the game from a different perspective, like how much the game means to the casual fan, uh, really has made a big difference in my life, because I get it. For some people, it's the best thing and the worst thing that happens all week for them is the game, the end result.
What about, I was gonna ask, what is the difference between that people don't really understand when you talk about how, like, Brazil soccer is like a religion versus how it is in the States? What does, like, a week leading up to a big game, what's that like in the neighborhoods of Brazil?
Well, it's depends on where you're sitting in the standings, and you know and in Brazil and Sao Paulo, like the dynamics of it are so different. Like, you got a club like Palmeiras, which is like a total Italian backed club. Like that's a team that I, always cheered for, because that's like, if you're an Italian, that's who you cheer for. And then you've got Corinthians, which is like the people's team. And then you have SPFC, Sao Paulo Football Club, which is a little bit more of an upscale area of Sao Paulo. And so everything, it's generated in the neighborhoods, and it's reflective of the neighborhoods that people come from, the barrios, that you come from. And so, who you are as a person, is directly tied into the club that you support, based on who you are as a, as a human being. Where do you live? Where do you work? Who's your family cheer for? What's your socioeconomic background? All of those things are a factor in Brazil, and it's not it's not something that's fabricated through marketing. It's just organically, it just happens because that's who you are. That's your club that you support, and then you fall in love with these certain players, like my generation, Socrates and Zico and Eder and Junior, like these guys that, like, I just worship as a little kid. Those are the things that stick in my mind the most. And obviously, Pele was like, it's everything. It meant everything, right? So that's where kind of the difference is here. I think it's a little bit more from a marketing standpoint, that you have to market teams, and it's what the TV marketing does for your support of a team. And so there's just a huge, vast difference. And honestly, like, I remember in 82, like, this will vividly stick in my mind, people committing suicide after the 82 loss, like, just, it was crazy, because your social economic background, the country doesn't have much. If a country doesn't have much going for it at the time, they're living their dreams through that team. And what how much worse can my life be, or how much greater can my life be, is based on this game. And now it's like, oh, okay, if I don't have Apple TV, I don't watch the game. So it's totally different.
So you have this amazing youth experience. How long are you in Brazil? Do you end up playing, like, in high school level, or do you end up coming to the States?
So I never played organized soccer until my freshman year in high school. And it wasn't in my parents' wheelhouse to understand anything about, my mom and I moved from Brazil together here in 80, I think it was 82. And, I just wasn't exposed to youth participation in club sports. We didn't know anything about that. And so I went through like a period of 3 or 4 years where I wasn't involved in anything, from sixth grade all the way through, freshman year. And I think they had like PE pickup, right? And we're playing PE. And this coach is like, hey, you're okay. have you ever played? And I'm like, well, I grew up in Brazil. And they're like, okay. But mind you, I'm going to tell you this. Like, so in high school, no one ever thought I was an athlete. There's like, no way. This guy's got long hair. He listens to like Judas Priest and metal, And so I wasn't your typical like, hey, he's an athlete. It was just a coach saying to me, hey, you want to come out and try out. And I did. And, but I always had a knack for being a goalkeeper. I don't know why. I don't know if it's because like I played team handball when I was younger and different things. Even in Brazil, I always like loved being a goalkeeper. And so I got lucky because my freshman year, I got on the JV team. I was like as a freshman, and the varsity goalkeeper became ineligible, and then all of a sudden I had to step in as a first time ever in organized soccer. I had to be a varsity goalkeeper of the number 3 team ranked team in the country, and so that was it. I had some really good mentors and got really lucky. I was at the right place at the right time.
What was the transition like when you go from soccer crazed Brazil to a period of 3-4 years? What was that transition like when you go from like chaos and just chaos, like craziness for soccer, to I'm not sure what I'm gonna do right now for the next couple of years?
Well, I just remember like trying to watch World Cup games, and you couldn't watch World Cup games, and the only thing that you got on TV was, on Sunday it was Soccer Made in Germany. That's, that was like the highlights. And you would see like an hour of, highlights of the Bundesliga. And that was it. That's the only thing that was on TV. And so for me, I was like just shocked that, you couldn't watch it on TV. And about that time, the NASL had kind of started folding, so just like that, the vibe of the country kind of just, dropped a little bit. And then I remember in Vegas, they had the Quicksilvers. And then in the MISL, the Missile League, the indoor league, the Las Vegas Americans. And so I started watching a lot of indoor for the 2 years that they were here. And I'm like, oh, this is, I guess it's the soccer in the United States, right? This is what it really, in an arena, and you're playing indoor. And so, so I guess that 3-year, 4-year period, it just was never around me. And so I had zero thought about playing, the game. So you play basketball, you play football, you try to just as a person from another country coming in, you're just trying to assimilate as much as you can. And luckily in high school, I was around a group of guys that played, and that kind of got that transition going. And they kind of said, yeah, we have leagues and we have different things. I didn't even know about that stuff. I had zero clue. I mean, I was, I used to be at skateboard park and, roller skating rinks and BMX bikes. And that was my shtick.
So just from beyond the coach saying, hey, I think you might be a good fit for our soccer team, what made the transition to being a varsity goalkeeper? What made that step kind of maybe, I guess, work in a way that has now brought you to where you're at now?
I had really good players in front of me, because we won a lot. And, but I just had a knack for, being successful during games. And, I was a good goalkeeper, but I wasn't great. I had a good trainer for a year. And after that, I just, thought it was like, okay, so I'm not going to get beat up by the football team. And because I'm on, I have a team, so I'm not getting beat up by different, guys, and too skinny to be a football player, too small, too short to be a basketball player. And, didn't petrified of a fastball. So it just, made sense for me to stick with this thing. And I think it just clicked, and my transition, the transition from like high school, then all of a sudden playing club, that kind of opened up my whole eyes, because, that year we had won state, state tournament again. And then people asked me, hey, we want you to play club with us. Do you want to do this? And that was the first time I ever played club soccer, was, starting in February of my freshman year is when I started playing club soccer for the first time. And then it just kind of took off. And that's where I kind of made all the relationships that I had in terms of soccer. And I got an idea of what I could do with it.
I was going to ask, so once you start realizing like I'm pretty good at this, people want me to be parts of their team. Is that part start growing and you start thinking maybe I can go to the next level, like college, et cetera?
Oh, are you kidding me? Nobody talked about college back then. That wasn't even like in my wheelhouse, in my household. That wasn't like even a communication about, like, hey, this is college. You're going to go to work. And so, I was an average student, like a 2.7 high school student, because I had other priorities in my life than school. My parents weren't really didn't hold me to a standard in terms of high school, in terms of grades. I barely took my ACTs. Guidance counselors in high school didn't talk about going to college or anything like that. And so, that wasn't even a conversation that, kids had. If you're good, you're going to go because somebody was going to recruit you. And, I think that, my thought was, well, I'll just keep playing, and just because I like playing. I just like playing the game. And so, coming out of high school, I had done well. I thought I was going to go to UNLV. That was like my dream, is to go to UNLV. And they were very quick to point out that I wasn't at the level that they were looking for. And so, I had marginal grades. I didn't have a budget. I didn't have, money saved up for college. My parents, said that you're going to kind of have to do this on your own if you're going to go to college. And so I just stopped looking for the opportunity to go into college, and I just started working, and literally got lucky. I was playing in a men's league game. This story's kind of getting old, I guess now. Is like, I was playing in a men's league game behind a 7-Eleven in the middle of nowhere, and a college coach showed up named Mike Pantaleone, and said, because I took a gap year, so he just showed up and said, hey, I'm starting a brand new program called the Yavapai College in Arizona. Do you have any interest? And I'm like, yeah, whatever. Right. So I took the brochure, and when he left, I threw it away. And, I'm like, I'm so above a junior college. So then I worked all summer, did all my, everything I'm supposed to be doing. And I'm then all of a sudden I'm like, you know what, this working thing sucks. I want to keep playing. And my family's like, hey, you got to start paying for rent if you're going to live here. I'm like, well, then I got to figure something out. So this is pre-internet. So trying to find someone's number pre-internet was impossible, right? So first of all, I couldn't even spell the name of the school, like Yavapai. I didn't even know what that was. So it took me a while, got a hold of enough operators in Arizona and trying to remember the name of this town. And then my buddy and I decided to drive. We called the coach, and he said, yeah, I'm still, we're still recruiting. We're just starting the recruiting process for this new team. Come take a drive, come down here, take a look at the school. Let me know what your thoughts are. So we took a drive, took a chance on spring break, took a drive down there, and it was awesome. We were like, oh, this is great. There's people my age here. They all hang out. Where's the field? We don't have a field. Like, what do you mean? Like, there's no field. We're still trying to figure that out. Okay. What about scholarships? No scholarship for you. Okay. So I'm like, all right, I'm in. Right. So first year program, I didn't have a scholarship. Just took a gamble, took a chance, and the rest is kind of history, I guess.
So has kind of taking risks, has that been something you've always been? Is that kind of your makeup, character wise, or was that just a once in a like a moon kind of move?
I so growing up in Sao Paulo, you have moments where if you're wearing a certain pair of shoes, you're going to probably get that stolen from you. If you're roller skating, you're probably going to get your roller skates stolen from you. If you have a nice ball, that's probably going to get taken from you from somebody. My mom been robbed, by gunpoint in taxi cabs, and your life is a little different, right? And growing up in Brazil, and then coming to the U.S., it's like, hey, who's this, foreign kid? Let's give him some grief on a consistent basis. So, you had to learn how to like fight a little bit and kind of figure out how to survive, right? And so it's always been in my makeup, I guess, to have a little bit of a chip on my shoulder and to like not accept what the situation is and just try to figure it out, like your street sense and your street smarts, right, as much as you can based on my background. And growing up in Vegas is, when you grow up in Vegas, it's a different life, for a lot of kids. And so, I take this chance at this junior college who had never played a game. Nobody even knows about anything. And, within the first year, we lost one game. No, we went on. No, I think we went undefeated. Yeah, we went undefeated the first year, but there's like, because of some sort of conference rule, we couldn't go to the national tournament. Like our first game, we played the junior college national champions, Forest Park, and we beat them 4-3. And the craziest stories, like we beat them 4-3 in Tucson, Arizona, and we actually had to go pick them up at the airport on our bus, And our coach, Mike Pantaleone, he's like, "Don't tell anybody that you guys play soccer. Act like complete idiots." Right. So we're like, "Oh, how long have you guys been soccer balling?" And these kids from St. Louis are looking at us like, what a bunch of clowns these guys are, all wearing tie-dye and Birkenstocks and whatever. So first game, we beat them 4-3. We beat the defending national champions, number one team in the country, 4-3. We go undefeated the first year. Second year, we lost one game. We won a national title. And then I was player, goalkeeper of the tournament, and JCAA, goalkeeper of the year. And that kind of opened up some different things.
I was going to say, so after all of that, what was some of the keys to being so successful? I mean, you don't hear a whole lot of programs that start one without a actual practice facility or a game field at the start, but end up with all that success. Was it just a group of guys that were just very, very good at soccer, or was there more to it than that?
I don't, it's crazy. Like that group of guys, the very first practice that we had, like in preseason, we just kind of looked at each other and like, holy cow, man, we got a good team. Like we're really good and we're going to be really good. And it was like fun because every training session and every game that we played in a squad game during preseason, it was like, man, this is like the best soccer we've ever played, and we had all played like good teams, but just, back then there wasn't just a lot of soccer out there for us, like in terms of being recruited. As a different era, but we're like, man, we're really good. And we're just like a bunch of misfits put together in the stories, like, and we had a really good coach, like Mike Pantaleone. The most analytical, detail-oriented coach I've ever in my whole life. Like everything, kept stats on everything, used different sports to teach soccer, like, the whole concept of like a plus minus system of hockey into soccer, like how to pick his lineups based on that. He posted everything, so it was always competitive and everything was out there. And so he knew exactly what he wanted, like what positions, like what's the profile of these positions. Like he's really, really good at knowing what he wanted. And so, I mean, it was just like magical. But off the field, like it was so much fun, like a bunch of derelict 19, 20 year olds all hanging out together in a dorm for the first time. And, we kind of had to like protect each other because we're the new kids in the whole department. And baseball was like, they had won a couple of national titles, and we just came in and just clicked. And so those guys, I still am on like a text thread with them to this day, like 33 years later. Like we still like razz each other and give each other a hard time, and it's special. It's unique.
You mentioned doors opening up from the success there. Where does Andre do you jump to another program, at
Yeah,
that point?
yeah, I got really lucky because so at the junior college national tournament, we had an unbelievable run. You know, completely blindsided everybody because no one really knew who we were. It's the first year, you know, that we participated in the national tournament. We won the whole thing, and you know, I still thought I was going to go to UNLV. That was like my dream, was to go back home and play there. And they're like, it's just not going to work, you know. And I didn't know anything about college soccer outside of UNLV and UCLA and San Francisco and San Diego, based on being on the West Coast. And you know, Fresno State used to have an awesome program. Those are the only programs I knew about. And Arizona didn't have any. You know, Grand Canyon was the only 4-year school at the time. They were Division two. So I mean, I didn't know anybody. I just thought it was like, okay, it's going to be over. It's done. You know, I'm going to go home. And then all of a sudden, I started getting some interest from the national tournament, and UConn contacted me. A couple different schools contacted me, and we were sitting at a basketball game, uh, and my coach comes blasting through the double doors and is like sprinting towards me, and I'm like, oh man, what did I do today? You know? And he's like, get over here now. And I'm like, okay. So just in the middle of a basketball game, you know, I walk off the bleachers behind the basket, go into his office. And he's like, Jerry Yeagley's on the phone right now for you. And I'm like, who's Jerry Yeagley? And he's like, it's Indiana University, you idiot. And I'm like, I don't know anything about that. You know, like, yeah, okay. And so I get on the phone with Coach Yeagley, and, you know, he's the godfather of soccer and most respected college coach, you know, on the men's side. And you know, he's like, Andre, this is Jerry Yeagley. How are you doing? You know, like, just one of our alums were at the national tournament and they saw you play. And we have a situation where Jurgen Summers, our All-American goalkeeper, is graduating. And we feel like you might be a good fit for us based on what you've done. I'm like, okay, you know, and this didn't even have an idea of what was going on. And then I had gone to a visit to UConn. So it all set up like in the next 2 weeks. I was taking finals, and my two official visits were UConn and Indiana. And Joe Maroney, who was like, you know, an unbelievable coach in his own right, had won national championships at UConn, and then Indiana University. And I went to UConn on a visit and literally came back home, took one test, got on the plane, flew out to Indiana University, and fell in love with the Bloomington campus, but really had a great connection with Coach Yeagley and I. And he said, hey, this is what we have in terms of an offer. And I said, Coach, I just can't afford to go to college. I just don't have money. My parents, you know, are not supporting me. And he's like, give me 48 hours when you get home, and I'll figure something out. And he did. And I went to IU on a incredible, you know, athletic scholarship that I'll never forget, and played for, you know, the most iconic program at the time, and that was awesome.
You mentioned Coach Yeagley as the godfather of men's college soccer.
Yep.
What was it about him? You talked about having a great connection with him. What makes him so, you know, held at such a high level, not beyond just the success that he's had in building that program? What was it about him that makes him, in your eyes, such a great coach?
Well, you know, I didn't have a massive, you know, father presence in my youth, and so just his aura about him, like his ability to come in and command a room, his presence, you know, you're like, there's something that he exudes out there, like leadership, right? And and the way he interacted with us and how he communicated with us and how he, you know, he valued me as a person, as a and was genuinely interested in me. Tell me your story. You know, who are you? What are you about? And like, I'll never forget that. And I still coach. You know, I call Coach all the time. You know, still call Coach all the time and talk to him. And he's like my dad. right, to this day. And he's like that to every player that has come through there and graduated from there, and even guys that left. You still, a big part of their lives. But it's just his presence and this command and this confidence, and this is like a guy I would run through a wall for. I would jump in front of a tank for him if that was the case. And the history behind the program, and here's an interesting, crazy stat for you is, and we've gone back as alums. Besides Coach Yeagley, there's never been a full-time assistant coach or head coach at Indiana University that has not been an IU grad or an alum from the program. Like a full-time staff. Volunteers, a little bit different, but a full-time staff member. So what does that tell you? This is 50 years. So May 19th to the 21st, we're going to be celebrating our 50th year as a program. So what does that tell you as a program, what that program means? Consistency, the tradition of excellence, that that unwavering idea of we're doing something bigger than just for us. It's for the program.
Is his impact on you, is that what kind of sparks the idea of going into coaching itself for you?
Yeah, I felt like this is something, well, because we always had camps at IU, and that was like a way for us to make money, was to work camps in the summertime. And that's really how I got involved in coaching, is that I started working the camps, and coach was like, you're actually good at this, and you have a really analytical brain in terms of the game and how you break things down, and you're really big about the analytics of the game and the details. And so he's like, if you want to pursue this, this is, I think, something you can do. And then I got drafted to go play in the CISL, which is the indoor soccer league. And I was like in my tail. I had one more semester of school, and I got drafted, and I'm like, well, should I go try this? And then I'm like, I think I'm going to come back and finish. I'm going to try this out. And I came back and decided to finish my degree. So I came back to IU, and coach said, hey, you can come in and be an undergrad assistant and help out with the goalkeepers if you want to. And so that's kind of how I got started with my college, coaching experience was through Indiana. And then I coached high school, I coached club, done ODP, so I spent some time kind of, testing things out. And then I got a call about a position at Washington State through a friend of mine. So then I went there on the women's side, and 25 years later, spent 25 years on the women's side, coaching Division I soccer.
What are some of you mentioned earlier at being at one of your stops for 18 years. Is that kind of taken back from like the Yeagley of building a tradition, a length type of thing, that you stay the course and that there's consistency and what have you?
Well, yeah. Well, number one, I wasn't fired, so that kind of helps out, because there were some bad years. I mean, we had some bad years, but I think people understood what I was trying to build, and they understood that. And I got lucky with some really good, understanding athletic directors through the good times and the bad times. But I think the biggest thing is that I always was a firm believer in, like, hey, let's try to make this as green as possible instead of looking for something else. And I love Flagstaff. I mean, the community itself was awesome. I loved NAU, and I felt like, hey, this is something I can build. And it took a while, and then once we got it going, it was we had a good run. Like the last 10 years were 11 years. It was a good run. So we built this brand new $156 million facility over there. It was just like we had all these things set in place for it to be great, and got lucky on some years. And it's like it's all good. It's all good. But lovely place, good memories there.
What was it that kind of let you know that maybe it was time to move on? and maybe go into the like soccer recruiting? Like, when did you start thinking, you know what, maybe I want to take a break from the coaching you mentioned earlier, like all the grinds of not just watching, but constantly having to take notes, and you're constantly just thinking about where could this player fit in my program and all that type of stuff. Because I think sometimes coaches struggle at times to say, maybe I'm at a point where maybe it's better for me to move on rather than stay.
Well, my father passed away the year before, my stepdad, who had been in my life for 30 years. And then, I went through a divorce, and I just remember sitting at home one time. It was like, it was in 2018, like I was sitting there, and my niece said, "Hey, are you coming home for Thanksgiving?" And I'm like, "No, I got to go recruit at Surf Cup." And she said, like, when are we ever going to have you home for any of the holidays? And then, just kind of hit. It's just like, I'm doing this, and the kids always graduate, and they always move on, but I'm still here doing the same thing. And I just got to the point where I just wasn't enjoying, the day-to-day stuff. And had really, we had a lot of turnover at the school in terms of athletic directors, sports supervisors, strength conditioning coaches, athletic trainers, assistant coaches, different coaches. And I just got to a point where I just, from a mental health standpoint, I was like, that's it, I'm done. I just don't have it in me. It's becoming, I didn't want to became edgy. And I'm like, it's time for me to just get out of this. This isn't as fun as it used to be. I love training. I love games. I just didn't like the stress, the pressure, like you come out of a game, and that, half of the parents that are in the stands staring you down hate you, and the other half are happy. You win a championship, and you still have people unhappy. And it's like, the media gets on. I mean, just time. It's just like, it just wasn't for what the pay structure was like, in terms of, like, and the amount of work that you put in. You look at the hourly rates. Coaches talk about this all the time. It's 24/7. The phone's always on, and you're always there for, you got to take a kid to the hospital, you got to do this, you got to do that. It's like you're always on. And I just took a trip one time. I was like going to Spain often to go, watch games and things like that. And I'm like, you know what, there's much more to life than just doing this. And so, yes, you can do coaching, and it's great, but man, when you sacrifice a lot of family time, and you miss a lot of holidays, and you miss deaths, like not being, my dad's side and stuff like that, and you're thinking, like, I got to be at this game, or I got to be here. And it's like, I got to the point where, like, I just don't want to be. I don't want to have to be anywhere anymore.
So then how does one end up at Soccer Recruiting USA?
Well, in my brief time, I was coaching club here in Vegas, uh, and I, through my interactions with people in Spain, uh, I started getting phone calls from people in Spain saying, "Hey, we have these American kids in these academies in Spain, and these kids are not going to be pro. Can you help them get them back to the U.S. and get them into colleges?" I'm like, "Yeah, let me fly out there and take a look at them, because I like to travel." So I'd go out, I'd go watch these kids. I'm like, "Yeah, these kids, they're good. It's just a matter of them. They've been gone for a year and a half, 2 years. They just got to get reconnected." So, I played some phone calls, made some things happen. So I had like 5 or 6 kids get placed. And then Don Williams called me out of, he and I connected, and he's like, "Hey man, do you know so-and-so at this school?" I'm like, "Yeah." "You have a phone number?" "Yeah, here you go." Then he called again. "Hey, just, do you have another kid? Like, do you have another number for this?" I'm like, "Yeah, okay, here you go." And he's like, "Do me a favor, take a look at this kid, and you tell me what you think." I'm like, "Yeah, this kid, can play. And what about this kid?" I'm like, "Yeah, I don't know if he could work." And all of a sudden he's like, "Hey, do you want to work with us?" I'm like, "Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know." So he just kept pestering me, and kept giving me leads on kids. And he's like, "Look, like, you're going to be helping kids out and families out based on just your background and your understanding of the game and what the college recruiting process is like, and you're pretty straightforward and honest. And I'm like, okay. So I started doing it part-time, and then he's like, you're really a natural in this and you're good at this and the families like you. Why don't you do this full-time? And then he said, you can travel whenever you want to, give you all of North America to work with if you want to, you do what you want to do. And so I took a chance, and zero regrets. I'm still going to games on weekends, still watching soccer, still involved in the game. Just I'm now on this side of the table explaining to people what that other side of the table is going to look like.
The one thing you mentioned earlier was the idea of like college wasn't part of like your family kind of outlook. Like it was everybody gets done, we go work, we're hardworking, all that type of stuff. What was the transition like for you to make the decision of I'm going to start chasing the soccer dream and not just stick with the so-called workforce?
Well, number one, I didn't like having my parents tell me that I had to be home at a certain time, because I took a gap year, and I'm like, I didn't even think about college. That was like, so you're talking about influential peoples in your life, right? I had, Jerry Egley, obviously, Mike Pantaleone at Yavapai College, but I had a high school coach named Randy Minigill, who had won like 7. He's in the Hall of Fame here in Nevada. He wrote in my senior yearbook, less partying, more studying will equal 4 years of free school. Mm-hmm. And then I had my senior year, I had a teacher, her name was Bobby Cartwright. She was an English teacher, and unbelievable teacher. And she said to me, she's like, if you quit pretending that you're stupid all the time, you might make something really great out of yourself, because you're a good communicator, you're a good writer. Start using your brain and stop trying to be cool and stupid and make people laugh. So I kind of took that like a challenge, and so I'm like, okay, maybe I can do this, And my senior year, my last semester of high school, I pulled off like a 3.8, which probably raised that 2.5 to 2.7, right? And so I thought, well, maybe I can do college. And then I was watching everybody else go to college, and I was working, and that kind of sucked, And so when I see everybody in the holidays, they come back and like talk about college and how cool it is and how much fun they had and what their experience, like whether they're an athlete or not, and I'm like, yeah, I'm at a warehouse, printing t-shirts and driving through alleys at the hotels, delivering them, there had to be a little bit something more to it. And then I just wanted to play. At the end of the day, it wasn't about the scholarship. It wasn't about going to college. I just wanted to play. I just wanted to play at the highest level I could possibly play. And if it worked out, it worked out. If it didn't, it didn't. But I just wanted to play.
What was it like? The one thing that I've heard kind of throughout is mom. How impactful has she, like you talked about being in Brazil, and it's not exactly the safest place at times, depending on, what you had on and all that type of stuff. And she's dealt with some things, and then moving you, from Italy over and now to the States. What have you, I guess, personally taken from what you've seen your mom do and go through that you've kind of incorporated into what you are now? You talked about the chip on your shoulder earlier. She seems to be kind of like a real big, strong kind of force in your life.
So my mom was born in 1943 in Czechoslovakia, Nazi-occupied Czechoslovakia, across the street from, where she was born, like this little village. It was a Nazi hospital, So as a small child, she was, grew up in that. And she went from one occupation to the next one, which was the Soviets coming in, occupying, Czechoslovakia. And, and I think about my mom, and like in 1968, she basically had to leave Czechoslovakia because she had written my mom's a polyglot, a multilinguist as well. And she had helped write a pro-democracy piece with an Italian magazine about Alexander Dubček, who was trying to do this pro-democracy, like this democratic socialism in Czechoslovakia. And, the Soviets had zero tolerance for that. And so my mom got a phone call with me, in tow as in the womb, like, hey, you got to get out because the Russian tanks are coming in, the Soviet tanks are coming in, the Warsaw Pact tanks are coming in, and your name's on the list. And you got to go. Otherwise you're going to get jailed. And so my mom had met my dad in Italy on vacation, and and then she's like, okay, I guess I'm going to Italy. So she left that. And so my mom's been like this just survivor, like what she's gone through, like what she's been around and what she's had to do to survive. It's been pretty incredible. And so even to this day, I like kind of marvel at the things that she's gone through. And she's like the ultimate optimist, she's like, oh, it is what it is, like that's like her. Right. And so I remember once, like my senior year, I got benched at Indiana. Towards the end of the year, I got benched and I wasn't playing well. And I called home and it was like payphone. I'm like, this sucks. And she's like, do you think Jerry Yeagley wants to lose a game? I'm like, what? She's like, the man's paying for your school. Do you think he wants to lose a game? Like they win championships there. I'm like, no. It's like, well, just shut up and just go work harder. What do you say to that? What do you say to that as a kid, right? You're like, all right, that's just hard truth logic, right? Like, just go get after it. I'm like, okay, that kind of puts in, but I've always kind of taken that chip on my shoulder. Like, hey, it's like, it's the whole, it's us versus the world kind of mentality. That's always how it was with my mom and I growing up. And now she lives in Czechoslovakia again, and so it's those humble beginnings, I guess, and seeing some of the craziness of the world. I try to tell that to kids now. I'm like, man, unless you think your life is bad, right? For like majority of kids here in this country that are playing youth soccer, I'm like, you don't even know, if you went to some countries and you owned the bladder of a soccer ball, you're like super rich, wealthy, and everybody wanted to be your friend. Everybody always wanted to be the friend of the kid that had a soccer ball, right? And here we just kind of take it for granted, like, we complain about this. I'm like, man, you don't understand how rich you are in the eyes of so many kids across the world based on what you personally have. And so that was the other thing too, why I kind of got out of college coaching. I'm like, hey, you guys don't even, we have it pretty good. You got it pretty good here.
Last thing to kind of wrap this up is, as you look forward, do you have aspirations or goals of kind of just taking this recruiting thing and building on it? Are you just kind of going with the flow and enjoying the experience, traveling, getting to watch games, helping parents and players become better educated about the recruiting process and connect them with the right schools and all that type of stuff? Is there part of you is there something else that you look at and go, I'd really like to give this a try? Or what's ahead for Andre?
Well, I think there are really, anything in life, you have some really bad actors, in the world of, placements. Like I used to be the guy that would delete anything, an email that would come in from an agency. I would just delete it, right? Because no one really knew what I was going through. And I would ask, hey, what is it? No one can tell, like, oh, this kid's a great player. He'll be a great fit for your program. I'm like, okay. Or she's going to be a great fit for your play, for your program. I'm like, well, have you ever seen us play? And they go, no. Have you seen the kid play? No. I'm like, so how do you know that kid's a good fit for my program? So I want to bring as much, as much credibility to the company and industry as we can, right? And that's why we have a lot of college coaches that work with us, which is great. And like as an invite only company, we're pretty selective, but we're also really straightforward and upfront with kids and families in the front end of things. And if they don't agree with it, that's fine. Like it is what it is. But I just want to bring some credibility to this side of the industry. And at the end of the day, I just want these families that I help place 10 years from now, go, hey, they're still talk to me. They still text me and they still message me and say, hey, how's life going? Thank you. So, like just something like build those relationships and see those kids thrive and succeed. I think that's where maybe that part of my, like the empath and the person that wants to give back. I think that's how I can give back. And then, if I can figure out how to make youth soccer free, I would make that's my long-term goal, is to figure out how to change the course of youth sports in this country, because it's kind of out of hand.
That's a perfect way to shut this chat down. This is Kieran with Coach's Corner Chats with Andre Luciano, and I'm out. Peace.
Peace.